The 50s weren't just about giant ants and flying saucers everyone remembers. Hidden beneath the creature from the Black Lagoon and Forbidden Planet lies a treasure chest of forgotten nightmares and atomic terrors that studios buried or audiences ignored. But if the best monster movie of 1957 wasn't the one with the biggest budget, but the one that dared to show what radiation really does to flesh? These 15 films prove that obscurity doesn't mean worthless, and some of the decade's wildest visions were left rotting in drive-in graveyards. The Monster That Challenged the World, 1957. This isn't your average giant creature feature, and that's precisely why it vanished from memory while Godzilla stomped into history. When an earthquake cracks open an underwater cavern in California's Salton Sea, prehistoric mollusks the size of buses emerge hungry and ready to drain every living thing dry. These aren't rubber suits waddling around. These are genuinely unsettling puppets with snapping mandibles and an appetite for human fluid that pushes the boundaries of 50s horror. The film commits hard to military procedural realism, following Navy personnel as they discover egg sacs filled with thousands of potential killers. Critics at the time dismissed it as low-budget exploitation, but modern viewers recognize the practical effects work as legitimately disturbing. The creatures move with an alien logic that makes them feel less like movie monsters and more like nature gone catastrophically wrong. Director Arnold Lavin shoots the Salton Sea location like a documentary, giving the film a gritty authenticity that studio backlot features couldn't match. The final confrontation in a flooded laboratory remains genuinely tense, with a mother defending her child from a snapping horror in rising water. What really sells this film is its refusal to explain away the monsters with pseudoscience. They're simply ancient nightmares that humanity disturbed. The modest box office returns meant Universal never promoted it properly, and it faded fast from theaters. But for creature feature purists who want their monsters practical and their stakes real, this delivers every single frame. The Cosmic Man, 1959. Bruce Bennett stars as a scientist trying to communicate with an invisible alien who materializes only in photographic negative, creating one of the strangest visual effects in 50s science fiction. The cosmic visitor arrives in a glowing sphere and can pass through solid matter, rendering military force completely useless against a being that exists partially out of phase with our reality. What separates this from typical invasion films is the alien's motivation. He's not here to conquer, but to judge whether humanity deserves survival or extinction. The philosophical weight hits harder than laser beams, with scientists and military leaders debating whether to destroy what they don't understand or attempt peaceful contact. Director Herbert S. Green keeps tension high despite minimal action, using the aliens' appearances as punctuation marks in an ethical argument about fear versus curiosity. Critics ignored it completely upon release, with only 3 major newspapers bothering to review what they considered a cheap knockoff of The Day the Earth Stood Still. But the film's meditation on human violence and our readiness to destroy the unknown feels painfully relevant decades later. The ending refuses to comfort the audience, suggesting that maybe we failed the test and just don't know it yet. Low-budget forced creative solutions and the lack of elaborate effects means the ideas carry the weight. This is cerebral science fiction disguised as a B-movie, and it rewards patient viewers willing to engage with concepts over spectacle. The Deadly Mantis, 1957. Universal gave this film a decent budget but virtually no marketing push, so audiences missed what might be the decade's best giant insect movie. A prehistoric mantis trapped in Arctic ice breaks free after a volcanic eruption and immediately begins a killing spree from the North Pole to Washington, D.C. The creature design is legitimately impressive, a full-scale puppet head and claws combined with enlarged real mantis footage to create something that looks genuinely alien and predatory. Director Nathan Duran shoots the attacks with surprising brutality for the era, showing the mantis spearing victims with its forelegs and dragging them away to feed. The military response feels authentic because Universal hired actual Air Force advisors who ensured every protocol and aircraft shown was accurate to 1957 standards. When the mantis attacks the Pentagon, the film shifts into disaster movie territory with civilians fleeing and jets scrambling in broad daylight carnage. Critics complained the human characters were boring, and they're not wrong, but the monster delivers enough pure spectacle to compensate. The final battle inside the Manhattan Tunnel ranks among the decade's best creature showdowns, with the mantis cornered and desperate, smashing cars and tearing through concrete. What really impresses is the sound design, with the mantis emitting an otherworldly shriek that sounds nothing like earthly insects. Universal dumped it into double features and never gave it a proper theatrical push, assuming audiences were tired of giant bugs after them. But this deserved better, because the technical craft and creature work surpass most of its more famous cousins. It's pure monster movie pleasure, with none of the camp that sinks lesser efforts. From Hell. It came 1957. A walking tree stump with a human face sounds ridiculous until you see the actual costume, which transforms absurdity into nightmare fuel through commitment to the concept. On a South Pacific island, natives execute a prince named Chemo for treason, burying him in a cursed tree that transforms his corpse into Tabanga, a lumbering wooden monster seeking revenge. This is exploitation cinema at its purest, with implied cannibalism, jungle rituals, and a monster that kills by crushing victims against its wooden chest. Allied artists knew exactly what they had and marketed it to the drive-in circuit, where teenagers embraced its wild premise and practical gore. The Tabanga costume is legitimately impressive, a full-body wooden suit that allows the performer inside to move with surprising menace. Director Dan Milner shoots the jungle setting with real atmosphere, using shadows and mist to make the island feel genuinely cursed. Banga rises from the grave. The film commits fully to its bonkers premise, playing the walking tree completely straight. Critics destroyed it, calling it the worst monster movie ever made, but cult audiences recognize the charm in its fearless weirdness. The kills are inventive for 50s horror, with Tabanga impaling victims on broken branches and dragging scientists into quicksand. What saves this from total camp is the natives' genuine fear of Tabanga, treating the monster as divine punishment rather than a freak of nature. The climax involves dynamite, a dam, and a wooden monster that refuses to die easily, delivering exactly the mayhem promised. This never pretended to be art, it's pure monster schlock executed with enough craft to entertain. For fans of creature features willing to embrace the absurd, this is essential viewing. The Brain from Planet Arouse, 1957. John Agar battles an evil alien brain that possesses his body, while a good alien brain inhabits his dog, which is either genius or madness, depending on your tolerance for 50s weirdness. The evil brain, named Gore, glows inside Agar's skull and gives him psychic powers he uses to threaten nuclear annihilation unless Earth surrenders. This is high-concept science fiction executed on a shoestring, with the alien brains represented by floating balloon-like props with glowing eyes. Director Nathan Duran, who also made The Deadly Mantis, embraces the absurdity and shoots the brain close-ups with enough dramatic lighting to make them genuinely unsettling. Agar clearly relishes playing evil, delivering threats to world leaders with a manic glee that elevates every scene. The good brain, named Vol, communicates telepathically with Agar's girlfriend through her dog, creating deeply strange sequences of a woman having serious conversations with a collie. Critics ignored it completely, but drive-in audiences loved the combination of alien possession, atomic threats, and practical effects that never apologize for their low budget. The climax involves attacking the brain inside Agar's skull with an axe, which sounds goofy, until you see how brutally Duran shoots the sequence. What makes this work is its total commitment to the premise, never winking at the audience or acknowledging how ridiculous everything is. Brain effects are cheap but memorable, and decades later they remain more iconic than many expensive creatures from bigger films. This is pure 50s science fiction ID, unfiltered and unashamed of its exploitation roots. For fans of atomic age paranoia mixed with body horror, this delivers completely. Kronos, 1957. A giant energy-absorbing robot lands in Mexico and begins draining Earth's power sources to feed a dying alien civilization, presenting existential horror through pure geometric menace. Kronos isn't a monster, it's a machine, a massive rectangular walking accumulator that converts nuclear reactors and power plants into fuel for transport back to space. Director Kurt Neumann shoots the robot with documentary-style realism, using forced perspective and miniatures to create a genuinely massive presence. The design is pure 50s modernism, all right angles and functional brutality, moving with mechanical precision that makes it feel utterly alien. Scientists race to stop Kronos before it drains enough energy to leave Earth in a pre-industrial dark age, creating genuine apocalyptic state. What separates this from typical invasion films is the solution. Humanity can't destroy Kronos through violence, but must trick it into consuming itself. The alien possession subplot, where a scientist is controlled by the aliens to protect Kronos, adds paranoia to the proceeding. Critics praised the effects work but complained about the human drama, which is fair but misses how effectively the film builds dread. When Kronos rises from the ocean, water cascading off its geometric frame, the image burns into memory. The ending suggests the aliens will simply send another accumulator, leaving Earth's survival uncertain. Low-budget forced creativity, and the filmmakers delivered one of the decade's most unique alien threats through pure design and concept. This is thinking person's science fiction wrapped in a monster movie package. For audiences tired of rubber suits and laser guns, Kronos offers something genuinely different. The Trollenberg Terror, 1958. British horror brings fog-shrouded mountain terror through tentacled creatures that decapitate victims and drag bodies into radioactive clouds. Based on a BBC television serial, the film expands the concept into feature length without losing the creeping dread that made the show work. On a Swiss mountain, climbers begin disappearing in mysterious clouds that descend from the peak, leaving only severed heads behind. The creatures inside the clouds are invisible until the finale, when they emerge as massive tentacled horrors with a single eye dominating their bulbous bodies. Director Quentin Lawrence shoots the mountain setting with gothic atmosphere, using real alpine locations to ground the supernatural horror. The decapitation angle pushes 50s horror boundaries, with the film showing headless corpses and discussing the murders with unusual frankness. When the creatures finally appear, the practical effects deliver genuine monster movie spectacle, with writhing tentacles snatching victims through windows. Critics dismissed it as typical British B-horror, but American audiences who caught it in drive-ins recognized the effective atmosphere. Climax involves the military firebombing the mountain, turning the final act into a war between humanity and things from beyond Earth. What makes this work is the slow build, with nearly an hour of mystery before the monsters reveal themselves. The creature's motivation, using humans as food for a planned invasion, adds cosmic horror to the proceedings. This is Lovecraftian terror filtered through 50s science fiction aesthetics. For fans of atmospheric horror with genuine monster payoff, this delivers completely. The Giant Claw, 1957. A giant bird from an antimatter dimension terrorizes Earth, and the creature effects are so catastrophically bad they become legendary, sinking what could have been a solid monster movie. This is the film that proves effects can destroy everything, because the script is actually competent and the human drama works until the bird appears. Columbia Pictures farmed the effects out to a cheap Mexican studio that delivered a puppet that looks like a demented turkey with googly eyes. Director Fred F. Sears reportedly had no idea how bad the creature looked until the premiere, and audience laughter crushed any chance of success. The antimatter concept is genuinely clever, explaining why weapons pass through the bird without damage, but nobody cares when the monster looks that absurd. Critics destroyed it, with Leonard Maltin calling it one of the worst films ever made, based purely on the creature effects. But beneath the terrible bird lies a competent 50s science fiction film with solid acting and genuine suspense. The military response sequences are well staged, and the destruction scenes have real impact despite the ridiculous monster. What makes this fascinating is how close it came to working, with one different effects decision potentially creating a classic. The finale, where scientists create an antimatter weapon to destroy the bird, is actually clever science fiction problem-solving. This is a cautionary tale about cutting corners on the one element that matters most in a monster movie. For bad movie enthusiasts, this is essential viewing, but for everyone else, it's a tragedy of squandered potential. The Strange World of Planet X, 1958, British science fiction delivers mutation horror when electromagnetic experiments tear holes in the ionosphere, allowing cosmic radiation to create giant insects and aggressive mutation. American distributors retitled it The Cosmic Monsters and cut 20 minutes, butchering the careful build-up and character work. The full British version shows scientists slowly realizing their experiments are dissolving Earth's protective barriers, with each new mutation escalating the horror. Giant spiders attack villagers, massive beetles emerge from the forest, and ordinary insects transform into human-sized predators. Director Gilbert Gunn shoots the mutations with surprising effectiveness given the low budget, using shadows and quick cuts to sell the creatures. The film's real weapon is atmosphere, with rural England transformed into a nightmarish landscape where nature turns against humanity. Critics ignored it completely, dismissing it as another giant bug movie when it's actually a cautionary tale about scientific hubris. The alien visitor who arrives to stop the experiments adds an unexpected twist, revealing that Earth's recklessness threatens the entire galaxy. What makes this work is the genuine sense of escalating catastrophe, with each mutation worse than the last. The finale, where the alien seals the ionosphere breach, suggests humanity narrowly avoided extinction through pure luck. This is thinking person's horror disguised as creature feature exploitation. For fans of British science fiction's more cerebral approach to genre filmmaking, this deserves rediscovery. The H-Man 1958 Toho Studios delivered this terrifying vision of humans dissolving into radioactive liquid after exposure to hydrogen bomb testing, creating body horror years before the term existed. Director Ishiro Honda, fresh off multiple Godzilla films, brings that same atomic-age dread to a story of gangsters and police hunting a killer that isn't alive. The H-Man is liquid humanity, victims of nuclear testing who became sentient radioactive ooze that dissolves anyone it touches. The effects work is genuinely disturbing, with people melting into puddles of glowing goo in sequences that push horror boundaries. Honda shoots the Tokyo underworld with film noir aesthetics, making this feel like a crime film invaded by nuclear horror. When the H-Men attack a nightclub, the scene explodes into chaos with victims dissolving on the dance floor while survivors stampede for exits. American distributors cut the film heavily and dubbed it poorly, but even the butchered version can't hide the genuinely unsettling concepts. The scene where a woman's dress collapses empty as she dissolves inside it remains one of 50s horror's most haunting images. Critics outside Japan mostly ignored it, focusing on Toho's giant monster films instead. But this is Honda's most sophisticated horror film, using the H-Men as metaphor for the invisible victims of nuclear testing. The finale, where the military floods the sewers to wash the H-Men into the ocean, provides no comfort. The creatures simply disperse into the sea. This is uncompromising horror that refuses to comfort audiences with clean victory. For fans of body horror and atomic age paranoia, this is essential. The Colossus of New York, 1958. A scientist's brain is transplanted into a towering robot body after a fatal accident, creating a tragic monster that murders with I-beams while struggling to remember his humanity. This is Frankenstein updated for the atomic age, with the creature a technological horror rather than stitched flesh. The robot design is legitimately impressive, hulking 8-foot mechanical body with a glass dome revealing the brain inside. Director Eugène Laurier shoots the transformation scenes with body horror intensity, showing the brain surgery and transplant with clinical detail that pushes 50s boundaries. The Colossus initially works with scientists, but slowly loses its humanity, becoming a threat when it realizes it can never truly live again. The I-beam deaths are surprisingly brutal, with victims collapsing instantly as their nervous systems fry. Critics praised the effects, but found the existential horror too depressing for monster movie audiences expecting simple thrills. The film's real power comes from the tragedy, watching a brilliant mind trapped in a metal prison slowly descending into murderous madness. When the colossus confronts its young son, who doesn't recognize his father, in the mechanical body, the scene delivers genuine, emotional devastation. Climax at the United Nations, where the robot attempts mass destruction before being stopped by its son's voice, twists the knife further. This is sophisticated science fiction wrapped in B-movie packaging, dealing with identity and humanity in ways most 50s films avoided. The robot effects hold up remarkably well, with the Colossus moving with convincing mechanical weight. For audiences who want their monster movies emotionally complex, this remains essential. The Flame Barrier, 1958. A crashed satellite brings blob-like alien organisms that dissolve anything organic, creating a race against time in the Mexican jungle before the creatures multiply beyond control. This is the blob's meaner older sibling, with organisms that don't just engulf victims, but actively break down organic matter into component elements. The jungle setting gives the film natural claustrophobia, with characters unable to escape the creatures spreading through the dense vegetation. Director Paul Landris shoots the dissolution effects with visceral intensity, showing flesh bubbling and melting in ways that push 50s horror boundaries. Satellite origin adds cold space paranoia, suggesting that space exploration will bring horrors we're unprepared to face. When scientists realize the organisms reproduce by consuming living tissue, the stakes become genuinely apocalyptic. Critics barely noticed the film's limited release, but drive-in audiences appreciated the gruesome effects and jungle atmosphere. The creatures themselves are rarely shown directly, mostly suggested through dissolving corpses and spreading slime that makes them more disturbing. What elevates this above typical blob movies is the scientific investigation, with characters genuinely trying to understand the organisms before destroying them. The climax involves fire, lots of fire, burning away the alien infestation before it reaches civilization. This is pure 50s atomic age terror, where humanity's reach into space brings back nightmare. The jungle photography is legitimately beautiful, making the horror contrast more effectively. For fans of creature features that emphasize dread over spectacle, this delivers. Night of the Blood Beast, 1958. Roger Corman produced this tale of an astronaut returning from space, pregnant with alien larvae, delivering body horror and male pregnancy decades before either became common in genre film. The crashed spaceship contains a pilot who's technically dead, but walking around, his body hijacked as an incubator for creatures that will replace humanity. The alien itself is a man in a rubber suit, but the film's real horror comes from the violation of the body and forced pregnancy metaphors. Director Bernard L. Kowalski shoots the confined setting with claustrophobic intensity, as scientists slowly realize the pilot is a walking time bomb. When X-rays reveal the larvae inside his chest, the body horror intensifies beyond typical 50s comfort zones. The alien attempts communication, explaining that its species reproduces through parasitic pregnancy, making humans perfect hosts. Critics ignored it completely, and it vanished into double features without making any cultural impact. But beneath the low budget lies genuinely transgressive science fiction that asks uncomfortable questions about bodily autonomy and forced reproduction. The finale, where the larvae burst from the pilot's body, pushes gore boundaries for 50s horror. What makes this fascinating is how it handles themes of reproductive horror that wouldn't become mainstream in genre film until Alien 2 decades later. The alien's justification that its species faces extinction and needs hosts to survive complicates the horror without excusing the violation. This is smart science fiction wrapped in exploitation packaging, and it deserves serious reappraisal. For fans of body horror with genuine ideas behind the viscera, this is a lost classic. Caltiki, the Immortal Monster, 1959. Italian horror maestro Mario Bava co-directed this tale of an amorphous Mayan blob that grows by consuming organic matter, creating genuinely nightmarish sequences of flesh-dissolving horror. When archaeologists discover Caltiki in a Mexican temple, they unleash a creature that's part ancient god, part radioactive mutation, and entirely unstoppable. Bava's cinematography transforms the blob into something genuinely alien and terrifying, using light and shadow to make the creature feel vast and ancient. The effects work is spectacularly nasty, with Caltiki dissolving victims and growing larger with each feeding. Director Ricardo Freitas started the film but quit after fighting with producers, and Bava stepped in to finish it, bringing his visual genius to the creature sequences. When Caltiki attacks a hospital, Bava shoots it like a nightmare, with the blob oozing through hallways and under doors as victims scream and flee. The film's mythology is surprisingly deep, suggesting Caltiki is a remnant of an ancient Mayan deity that once demanded endless sacrifice. Critics dismissed it as Italian schlock, but European audiences embraced the visceral horror and genuine scares. The radioactive angle allows the military to finally destroy Caltiki with flamethrowers, providing a climax of pure destruction. What separates this from American blob movies is Bava's visual artistry, turning cheap effects into genuinely beautiful and terrifying images. The scene where Caltiki engulfs a man and reduces him to skeleton remains one of 50s horror's most brutal kills. This is Italy's answer to the blob, but meaner, weirder, and visually superior. For fans of international horror and Mario Bava's genius, this is absolutely essential viewing that too few have experienced. These 15 films prove the 50s had more to offer than just the classics everyone remembers, and obscurity doesn't equal worthless. Some of these deserve their fate, but others are genuine lost treasures waiting for rediscovery by audiences willing to dig past the famous titles. Which of these forgotten nightmares sounds most essential? And are there other 50s monster films that deserve rescue from obscurity? Drop your picks in the comments, but here's the real question that needs answering. Did the 50s actually produce better monster movies than modern CGI blockbusters, or are we just nostalgic for rubber suits and practical effects that at least felt real?